All right, everybody. So I'm excited to introduce two great entrepreneurs that we're lucky to have here in Gainesville. Really a shining light to what Gainesville is and the entrepreneurial community that we have. Our moderator, Mitch Glaeser, and our guest, Collin. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background and then I'll let them actually dive in a little bit more. Mitch, reading his bio, I mean, you would just be in awe of his accomplishments. Starting his 11th company, true definition of entrepreneur. Works tirelessly as a community leader, philanthropist, and mentor. Really grateful for him giving his time to come here and moderate these events for us. It's a real value to our community. His accomplishments are too great to list, and I was going to try, but I'm not going to try now. I'll let him do that. Something from the last of these events that really struck me was core values that come from the fact that he is one of 81 children, foster parents, youngest of 4 boys, so 76 foster children, and what kind of rose out of that. They're all of his siblings are self-employed entrepreneurs, which is pretty amazing, and he has a strong connection to Gainesville. Collin, equally dynamic entrepreneur and personality. I've personally gotten a kick out of watching some of his YouTube videos, his personality and how he kind of comes across that way. He's the founder and chief of everything at NS4L, New Scooters for Less, which is one of the largest scooter dealerships in the country. He's a graduate of UF, and 13 years later, he is still here, active in our community, running a forward-thinking business, and recently starting a new venture called Gainesville Golf Carts. Without further ado, Mitch and Collin.
Let me just kick things off again, much like we did last month, and let you know that this is kind of like a fireside chat. This is an opportunity where I really get to kind of dive deep into a very, very successful local entrepreneur and kind of jar some of the fun stories out, but also some of the key elements that make an entrepreneur successful in this environment here. So there's a lot of great talent in Gainesville that's out there with a lot of wonderful ideas. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone knows that Gainesville is an awesome, organic place to create a company and to take those ideas to market. And some of them, quite candidly, are sexy and some of them aren't. In fact, today's guest, Collin, you might not think scooters are too sexy, except when the fact that you're going to learn that he actually changed the industry here locally in terms of mobile transportation, especially for the student population here in Gainesville. So I'm excited to be here again to do a podcast and also a live interview to talk about the Gainesville startup environment here. And Collin, so we'll start things off pretty slow. I'd like for people to kind of know a little bit about yourself. I know you have a couple great kids, but what brought you to Gainesville, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. School brought me to Gainesville. I grew up as a military child, bounced around all over the world. And my 4 years at the University of Florida from 2000 to 2004 were the longest I'd ever lived in one place. So I literally went to 3 high schools, and with my dad being in the Air Force, literally bounced around every 2 to 3 years. So those 4 years made it feel like home. And I remember going to Career Showcase at the University of Florida, which is great for a lot of students. But I went in dressed in my suit and tie and my resume, walked around and shake hands with recruiters, and the entire time thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna work for you. And it was in that moment that I realized that I was never going to work for anybody. And then it was really like light bulbs going off, right? Like it was like, okay, well if I'm not gonna work for someone, what am I going to do? And I remember sitting at that bus stop, waiting for the bus. Back then we didn't have the really cool app that told you how long it was, that it was approaching. We didn't have any of that kind of stuff, right? So I'd get out there and I'd sit. 15 minutes would go by and then the bus would start to approach and then it would literally drive by with those words, full bus across the top. And let's just say that happened one too many times. And so I decided to solve that problem. And that was only one of the problems, right? Because we couldn't park on campus. UF was building on the only land that they had. just parking lots. And that just created more reason for scooters.
All right, so how long ago was that?
So that was in 2004 when I started the company. So we actually, I was in a partnership at the time, and we started the company in March of 2004. I graduated in May of 2004.
Okay, so I want to take a quick break and let you know we're going to do this one a little bit different. We're going to talk about 45 minutes or so, and then we're going to have about 15 minutes of questions and answers also. So this podcast can be a little bit different than before. So just if there's something that you're thinking about, save that till the end, and hopefully we'll be able to get to your question. I meant to mention that earlier. So you started in 2004, so we haven't really got into the personal stuff, but we'll get there. I guess you get married later in life. So
I did, 2007. 10 years in December.
Okay. So so you're raising a family here.
I am.
Yep. And so you have a couple kids, as I mentioned.
I do.
So they're riding scooters yet?
They're not. So they're 7 and 3. And just a fun little story for you guys. My son Schaefer was born on August 24th of 2009. And if you know anything about scooter world and scooter time and busy season, obviously our busiest month of the year is August when all the kids are coming back. So August 24th was literally the first day of school that year. And so I had to miss the first day of school to go to the hospital, having a baby. And so I just missed, the crazy time. And I come back to the shop and I start telling my team, they're making fun of me for it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I promise guys, it'll never happen again. Like, I'm so sorry, we'll plan better next time, it'll never happen again. And literally 4 years later, we have another baby boy on August 24th, 2013, 4 years to the date. They have the same birthday, and so that will live with me forever. And we're known for having babies in the middle of back to school busy season.
Well, congratulations on the next one.
On the next one, yeah.
Anyway, so let's start a little bit of diving into, you have an idea. So you literally have an idea as you're sitting at a bus stop, which is pretty random, pretty kind of crazy, off the wall, but you're thinking it can solve a problem. So I know a little bit about the story that we're going to evolve into, but in terms of, did you really think that you could change the marketplace here?
That obviously wasn't the thought when we started. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're literally going to change the face of an entire community. It was, let me help students get to and from class. Let me help them save their time. We all value our time, right?
Right.
And so that was the thought process. It was just like, let me help college students. And that's what I set out to do. And that's our mission to this day. It's like, let us help college students get to and from class at their convenience without having to wait for the bus or deal with campus parking.
So, have you ever ridden a scooter?
Yes.
Okay. So, we laugh, but sometimes you come up with an idea that you've never actually done, right? So you had ridden a scooter, but so let's talk about how do you set up shop? So where do you get your funding? How are you able to buy wholesale and sell retail and those kinds of things?
It's a good question. It's a lot of trial and error. So I remember when we bought our first batch of scooters, we literally got them in and they were all junk. And my business partner and I literally stripped them all down and sold them for parts on eBay because we weren't willing to sell them because they were junk. And obviously as we progressed, we bought another batch from somebody else and learned, and you figure out who the best is, and that just slowly starts to evolve. It's just trial and error. In terms of funding, it was our money that we had pulled together, and we literally started the company on $19,000. And if I'm being honest, a lot of all of it was his money, was my business partner's money. He was still in school, and I was investing my time. So I was the partner who was really working while he was still in school because he still had 2 years left. And unfortunately that relationship didn't work out. I mean, at least in terms of a partnership. We ultimately had different visions and we split in 2006, just a couple years later. But it's been nice to see it's made a full circle, and he's actually one of our suppliers today. Wow. So it's an interesting it's an interesting relationship for sure. But I think that's important. I think it's an important lesson, especially for anybody who is getting into a partnership. You need to be very clear as to the direction and where you're going. His vision wasn't wrong. It was just different than mine. And he actually went completely wholesale, and I went completely retail. And now he's one of our suppliers as a wholesaler to a retailer.
Right.
So it's interesting. But
So partnerships are interesting because a lot of people, and I've had partnerships in some of my startups as well, and I've also done things on my own. So I've had kind of the yin and the yang, the luxury of having it both ways. Sometimes they don't work out, and sometimes they're brilliant in their chemistry. And so, I actually didn't think I'd be talking about this with you, but what are some of the key things that people would need to think about before they get into a partnership with someone?
definitely, like I said, the clarity of the vision is super important. I don't really think just in partnerships, but just in business in general, what's your mission? What's the vision? Like, what's this company look like 10, 20 years from now? And what are the values that you're not gonna, get away from? Like,
Right.
they're stone, they're rock solid. What are those values? And I think those are important before you really start venturing off in a partnership. And the expectations,
Yeah.
right? I think when it comes to partnerships, what's important to know, and especially like, a B last month and stuff, from Fracture,
Yeah.
just for the people who weren't here last month, they have different strengths, right?
Right.
I think that's so important in a partnership.
Yeah.
Having opposite strengths. If you have the same strengths, then, there's not a ton of benefit there.
Yeah, you can
But having
step on
opposite
each other,
strengths
right.
can really, really help.
Well, one of the things that I know for my company's been very valuable is actually an exit strategy, because then it just kind of secures a place where you know that if things go in different directions, you actually have a jump off point. And that's kind of prescribed on the front end versus halfway into it and you kind of get the personalities of you're taking advantage of me because you have resources and I don't, or that would be the worst case scenario.
I think that's great advice because,
Yeah.
Life happens,
Right.
right? I wasn't married at the time, but even just being married, having kids could change, priorities.
Right.
Maybe the business isn't the priority anymore. Maybe the family is, and that can obviously leave a bad taste in a partner's mouth, maybe.
Right.
So,
But I've definitely seen partnerships that work out the best when they have that strategy up front.
oh yeah,
And it's just clearly articulated what the jump off would be for one partner or the other. So
absolutely.
anyway, so where did you start off first? Where was your first location?
It was actually 8 miles north of
Wow.
Gainesville, out there in the industrial park.
Sure.
Interestingly, Fracture was in the same unit several years later, so I think that's kind of interesting. But
Note to self.
Let's you do it.
we were out there for several years, and it's just industrial warehouses. Why were we out there? Because it was cheap.
Right. Right.
It's like small little showroom space and a lot of warehouse. So.
Right. Okay. So you're growing. How long were you in that location?
Till 2007.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we made our move to our first more retail location, which was on 14th Avenue, right off of Main Street. And we were there from 2007 through last year, 2016.
And where are you now?
We're half mile north of UF on 13th Street.
Yeah. On Fifth Avenue. Is it near Fifth?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, pretty close to
Corner,
Fifth. But we literally sit on 13th Street now, which is a blessing.
Right.
It's so much traffic right there.
Yeah.
Very close to the school.
So we were talking a little bit earlier, and I think one of the neat things for me is to be able to get you here today because you represent such a remarkable story in this environment here in Gainesville. Growing so organic and coming up with such a simple idea and executing. And I know you've had your stumbles along the way, but what I like to do is to try to pry loose some of those mentors, or I call them turning points. Anybody that's heard my last podcast or here last time know that if you dial back in your life, there's a few points in life that really take you a whole different direction. It might be a teacher or a relative, might be just a simple parent. or it might be the time that you broke something and somehow it got resolved in a way that, it changes your life because it's not the end of the world. Or who knows, right? So I want you to dial back for me some of the genesis of who you are that make you such a rock star. And I'll tell you, we were going to put like a seatbelt in his chair because he's usually like 90 miles an hour and you're full of energy for sure. But
I'm sure there'll be a moment where I start going in a direction, I'll come back to you and be like, what was the question? Because that happens to me all the time. I mean, there's been so many those points in my life. I look back at being an Air Force kid,
okay,
and that had so much impact on my life today, and I didn't realize it back then. I mean, for example, one of the things that really stands out to me is remembering people's names when I meet them for the first time. When you go to 3 high schools in 4 years,
right,
and you want to make friends, you better remember the people's names when you shake their hands.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so all those things have really just helped me at this point, up to this point in my business. I would say the biggest turning point, though, in my life was when I split with my partner.
Uh-huh.
That was in January of 2006. It wasn't the prettiest split, and but that was what I needed to really produce that fire in me at that time. That was the motivation. Like, I really wanted to prove to this guy
right,
that that I was gonna be okay.
Right.
And I'm very, very competitive. At that point, it was like, I want to beat you.
Right.
And I don't think that should necessarily be the drive for people in their businesses. We want to find purpose in our work, but like when you're competitive, I always had that competitive nature. I very much felt like, okay, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And not only that, but even before that, I remember, and my dad hates it when I tell this story, but I told my dad when we were starting the company, hey, I want to start my own business. And he was really against it for several reasons. He was like, no, Collin, like, go get a job, have benefits, save some money, and then later on, if you want to start a business, then I'm all about it. And I really looked at it as like, well, I don't have a wife right now. I don't have kids right now. I don't have a mortgage right now. If I'm going to do this, now's the time to do it. And ultimately, like, and he would tell you that I was right, but one of the things he told me was, when you fail in 6 months, don't come crying to me for money. And of course, you understand why he hates why I tell that. Because he is, without a doubt, one of my biggest supporters. I mean, he's invested into my company. I mean, he's with an amazing father. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, I wonder if he did that on purpose. Because it was straight up the motivation that I needed. Because it was very much like, all right, I'm going to show you that I can do this. I'm going to show you that this is the right decision. And it was that motivation,
Right. It's funny, I think that's a big lesson. I don't know if you really caught on to that, but when you are younger, your risk level is much, much lower. And not that I'm all that old, but I'm much older than you. I will tell you that every time I start a business, the risk is so much greater. Because if I was to lose it all, it's losing a lot more than nothing. And so I hope you'll take that as kind of inspiration to kind of chase your dreams young and early and go for it. Because truthfully, I've had my failures as well as successes, and you always learn from those. Hopefully you learn more from the success than the failure, but a lot of times those failures are really kind of what you were talking about, that adversity moment, kind of that moment of truth, because you really find out who you are. You find out what kind of grit and desire you have to really make that dream and for this particular thing, a service business to people that much better than your competitor, right? It's not as if you have the only scooter company on the planet. So I think that's really a key element to think about and take away. I talk often about adversity creates the greatest opportune moments. And so sometimes those darker, low points are the time that you kind of do pull yourself up. And sometimes it's as simple as wanting to prove somebody wrong, which can be a motivator, may not be the perfect motivation, but it certainly can give you the drive. So tell me a little bit more about the market share and marketplace. So how do you compete? Because I want to talk and transition a little bit to culture, because you can talk all you want about scooters, and we talked about some pretty fancy ones, but really companies are built around people. And so when you went off to run off to have your baby with your wife, your company had to continue to run on the busiest day of the year. So I want to talk a little bit about how you develop that and what are some of the core things. How many employees do you have?
We're at about 24 right now.
You have 24 families to feed off one company. That's just amazing. I mean, that's just incredible. And you should be so proud. That's unbelievable.
I'm super proud of them. I mean, I think, when we talk about culture is always about the people, right?
Right.
We've established values and we hire and fire by those values, but it's always going to be, culture's always going to be established by the people that you bring into the organization.
Right.
And so we're always looking for the great attitudes, just the positive, optimistic people in life, because they bring that into your business and it just radiates from the business. Like me as a CEO, as the leader of the organization, it's my responsibility to just make sure that they're taken care of, right? If I make sure that the team is taken care of, then they're going to make sure that the customers are taken care of.
Right.
And that's how the culture gets established, is by them.
Right. So how do you do retreats? Do you do what fun times do you have, and what kind of?
We do all sorts of fun things.
Well, so share with some of the things, because I think that's important. Employee satisfaction is just as important as customer satisfaction. And so if you're going to build a company, you better build it right. And it's when you're small and nimble like that, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there, and I've run some larger companies as well, it's really key that if you're going to grow from that core has to be just right. So what are some of those things that...
I think most of the things that we do happen within the shop.
Right.
It's the atmosphere. It's very much, we have loud music going on, there's lots of crazy lights, we do have the corduroy beanbags everywhere, and that just provides a space that you want to go into. Those I refer to as perks, really. They're not that's not the culture, right? But that makes an environment that people are attracted to, that they don't mind spending their time in. So we do that. We love to do just celebrations. We did Cinco de Mayo celebration, had Tijuana Flats come in and cater, that we were all dressed up. I had my sombrero on all day, and just that kind of thing. And a lot of the stuff people disagree with, we very often have Beer Cart Friday, where we fill up a beer cart at the end of Friday, and we all just hang out with each other, talk, just relax at the end of the day. I think some people don't like that kind of thing for liability reasons, maybe, but it's fun for us, and we keep it safe and just within the team. So.
Right.
And of course, just events. I think they love opportunities to go out and play laser tag and shoot me up. Let's shoot the boss.
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
Yeah. So we met. I wasn't chamber chairman yet, but I remember meeting you at a chamber event where you had hit some roadblocks with some of the city zoning issues and so forth, as I recall. You were looking at, I think, a location on 34th. Is that correct?
I brought that area up as an example.
Right.
And it really had to do with the advanced auto parts that was there.
So I guess the key was there was a zoning issue. How do you find navigating the processes? So a lot of people, quite candidly, say, okay, I have an idea and I want to go open up the shop, and they they call, I have a real estate office as well. They'll call us and they'll say, hey, we want to go into this particular building, but the zoning isn't right. So they might have a, commercial use going into an office building, and that they think it'll fit, but it doesn't necessarily. So any keys or successes or challenges to navigating the policies to opening a business?
I think it's just really, whether it's the real estate agent that's helping you, just having somebody who's educated in the field steer you in the right direction, connect you with the right people at the city to really, share whether or not you're going to fit within those zoning restrictions. My problem when it came to the zoning was very much around the fact that I feel like we should be retail.
Uh-huh.
I mean, these were scooters that were sitting in the showroom. They didn't have fuel in them. You know what I mean? They were on display.
Right.
And our challenge was that they were being classified as automobiles. And, the spaces that were available to us under the business automotive zoning was these large car dealerships. I don't need 600 car parking spots with a little bit, you know what I mean? So it just made it extremely challenging. I think the city has gotten much better in terms of, sitting down with business owners and really and just talking and listening. I think that's obviously a very important part of their leadership is listening to the business's concerns and helping navigate the way. I think we as, small businesses, or if there's any startups in here, there's so many more resources available today than what I had in 2004.
Right.
In 2004 when I started the business, I felt literally on my own. I had to figure out, what do I need an occupational license? What is it? I had to figure out all the things that I needed on my own, and there was no guidance. And I feel like today, the city of Gainesville has done a much better job of having a point person, people that you can go and talk to and get that guidance that's necessary. Plus, we have all the resources like this. We have a community of other businesses and other business owners that you can absolutely reach out to that are, more than willing to offer some guidance, which is something that didn't exist 13 years ago either.
Right. So here's the neat part that I wanted to kind of tee up for you is I saw in your bio you had talked about the number. I remember the fee structure for a scooter, the number of scooters on campus in terms of parking places and so forth. So first, share with us kind of that evolution. So literally when you began in the market, how many scooters were there really in Gainesville?
I honestly have no idea. But there was not very many. It was called motorcycle parking when we started.
Right. Okay, fair enough. So there was no scooter parking, right?
Right.
I'll just put it in proper context that this completely developed out of a random idea sitting at a bus stop, just to kind of put it in perspective. So you started at zero. The scooter world has exponentially grown thousands of fold over, only to revolutionize the mode of transportation here in Gainesville. Okay? And so I want you to talk about that. I mean, that's something, one, to celebrate, but two, what were some of the things you navigated? Because obviously you had to have conversations with the university.
You know what? I mean, I wish I could say I have had conversations with, the director of transportation and everything like that, but the evolution really became naturally, at least in terms of the scooter parking spots. There was never a time where we said we needed scooter parking. What happened was all the hashed areas at the end of parking rows, that was the scooter parking, and there was a sign in the middle that said scooter parking or motorcycle and scooter parking. And what happened is, as you sold scooters, people would cram into these blocks, right? And they would just, when there's only 2 or 3, it's no problem. Now there's 15, it's a big problem because if your scooter is in the middle and scooters are all over the place this way, you have to move 10 other scooters to get yours out. That created damage to people's scooters, It created a problem. The university naturally developed scooter parking slots, areas where you would pull in one way and actually park your scooter. That actually evolved just from the need. And then you just slowly see it escalating, where in Norman Garage, for example, there was a small amount of scooter parking, and then it just gets a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, and that's been amazing. I think what's really cool is when we see the impact that we've actually had on a lot of the code that's happened in Gainesville. I think an example, or even just, and I don't know if it's necessarily the city making them do this or if it's just the business doing this, but I think the new Publix on 13th Street is a great example. Like, they have a row of little slots with an S, not an M, an S for scooters. And I think that's really neat. And that's something I've never seen before.
How many scooters would you estimate are out there now in Gainesville?
I get asked that question, and it's a hard question to answer because you always have that constant flip.
Are they licensed?
Yeah.
They're tagged? So you don't know the tag registration number in terms of total?
I know how many we sold, and I know the market share that is, right? So we sold 813 scooters last year, and that was about 65% of the Gainesville market. So you can rationalize what the yearly number is, right? And then you can say, okay, over 4 or 5 years, what that number is.
So
but
probably fair to say 5,000 or something.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think what's one of the factors, and it's a pro, and sometimes it's a con, is we're always gonna have turnover, right? We're in the student business. So we have a customer for 4 or 5 years, and then they graduate and they move on to the next chapter of their lives, and we get the next group of freshmen, which is great because we always have that new business coming in every year. Well, we're also, the lifespan of our customers is very short. So it's also a challenge.
Yeah. So challenges, what do you see on the horizon as far as challenges?
The biggest challenge right now is how tight scooter parking is becoming on campus. You know, where scooters were the solution to the car parking on campus. Now we put so many scooters out there that now scooter parking is super, super tight on campus. I think the university is going to evolve and they're going to add more parking, but at the same time, there's only so much that they can do as well. So that's just starting to get tighter and tighter and tighter. So I think that's an immediate challenge. And for us personally, it's the scalability, right? My team knows very well that I have no intention of being a small scooter dealership in Gainesville, Florida. We want to build out a global brand. And
does that mean go into other markets?
I would have told you back in 2004, those early years, that would mean setting up 1,000 scooter dealerships across the nation.
Right.
I think with technology and a lot of the things that have happened over the last 13 years, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to necessarily, if we did that, it would be very much be some sort of franchise model, right? I'm not going to have a bunch of corporate-owned stores, and I'm not going to travel all over the United States to visit them all.
So how do you monetize globally if you're going to be a local company?
Well, what's interesting, I think that's what's cool about business a lot of times, is that you'll start doing one thing, and new opportunities will come to you, right?
Right.
For example, Snapchat. I started using Snapchat to talk to my customers. It's not a marketing tool, it's a customer service tool. I use it to answer questions. These students reach out to me via this social media platform to answer questions. All of a sudden, word starts to spread that this guy is a Snapchat guru in Gainesville.
Right.
I've started consulting people on Snapchat. I've been paid $100 an hour to help people with Snapchat. And so those are opportunities that present themselves as you become an expert in a specific area, right? And I think that's going to continue to happen. One of the things that's happened within our dealership is we've noticed the need for communication to our customers. So we developed a software. We started using the software internally. And now we're okay, maybe there's an opportunity to share this with other dealerships.
Right.
And and so I think there's lots of ways that we're going to be able to scale, and I think it's going to be in a way of technology where we're really sharing what we do and helping other scooter dealerships across the country be more efficient and be able to communicate with their customers and just use this service that we provide.
Right. Okay, so let's tip our toe into technology. So, Gainesville actually just partnered with the University of Florida to look at autonomous vehicle use and production and size and scale for the local area here. And we all know it's here. It's not even coming. It is here. Driverless cars are here. They're just not released yet, if you will. And so, that could transition to driverless buses, to driverless vehicles, driverless Uber vehicles. I mean, there's just all kinds of modes of transportation have got to be nipping at your heels where you created this solution. But others in the marketplace through technology are also thinking about how to eclipse those users that you have. So share with me how you're keeping that foot firmly planted on the business you have, which is awesome, right? 60% market share, created a dynamic that didn't exist before, to what we all know is evolving. As I tell people, if you know what transportation is going to be in 10 years from now, you're an idiot. You have no clue. You have no clue. You can guess, but there's just no way that you know what transportation is going to be like in 10 years because the technology is so rapidly shaping and taking form. So with that nimbleness that you have to have, what do you see as a future? And I'm talking about even things for your own product, batteries. So, one of the big things, you have to do these tune-ups and the gas gets old and store them and all this. So first of all, let's answer one question at a time. What do you see as the future of the scooter world versus other technologies of modes of transportation?
I don't think anything drastic is going to happen to scooters over the next 5, even 10 years. I think there's such a convenience to being able to walk down the stairs from your apartment complex, jump on your scooter, go to class and park right in front of class. And as long as that's still there, then we're going to be solid for a while. Now, we don't necessarily want to be romantic about the way we make money either. We need to understand that things are going to evolve. We have, like, talking about battery technology, like, we have one of the first electric scooters in the state of Florida by a company called Gen Z. Like, we're one of maybe 2 dealerships. This thing has like an Android operating system on it. It's touch screen, and I mean it's awesome. I mean, if somebody steals this thing, like, you get a notification like on your phone. Your scooter's just been stolen. Like, it's located here, And I actually had team members moving it around in the back warehouse and to send me an email saying my scooter had been moved. So there's always going to be advancements in technology and the battery. I see the electric technology really taking off over the next few years. We're definitely getting into some electric vehicles. We have electric bikes now, we have the electric scooters now, and obviously we're doing the golf carts now. So I see a lot happening in that world. I think it's important for us just to be paying attention, right? And not being unwilling to change. One of our core values is to embrace and shape change. When we see these things happening, we want to be at the forefront of it. We don't want to be left behind. In fact, we want to be the ones creating the change, right? So I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, it does. It does for the most part. I find it fascinating that you could take a scooter and put it on more of a pod system where it's 4-wheel, and it is electric, and it's autonomous. It's just a single vehicle. It's like a scooter. You get on it, it's at your door, you ride it from point A to point B. So I think that is definitely something that could happen, and I'm sure you'll have the dealership for that. But that's really, to me, is getting the safety factor combined with the autonomous side, to me, because honestly, that the autonomous is a lot smarter than we are in terms of reflexes and knowing where things are and so forth. And so I definitely see that collision, not collision bad, but that idea collision coming together in the scooter world where it gets off 2 wheels and more on 4, but definitely for individual pods, where it moves people individually, where you literally could call them to your door. I mean, to some degree. It's not that far-fetched of an idea, but I know as a business owner.
Maybe pods for less, I don't care.
Pods for less. Somebody go on.
Buy that domain now.
Yeah, get that domain. So I believe it. By the time this is over, it's going to be gone. But I definitely see that as something that could happen for sure. So that's definitely a technology. So what about funding? You talked about the 19,000. Was there any other funding
Yeah,
needs
absolutely.
along the
I
way?
mean,
So how did you fulfill that?
we started with friends and family. Credit cards obviously helped. I mean, one of the things that my dad did do really well when I was in college was he set me up with a credit card that was linked to him. So anytime I needed textbooks, I go out and buy textbooks, and I would swipe it on the credit card, and because I was linked to that account, that just helped me establish some credit.
Gotcha.
And so when I graduated, I had some excellent credit, and I was able to get a credit card with a few $1,000s on it. So that helped. And then we interestingly was able to get traction by getting private loans. So we owned 100% of the company, but we got private loans. We paid high interest on those loans. But that's how we were able to get the initial dollars into the company. And like I said, the company was a little bit different in those early days, 2004 to 2006. We were doing some wholesale stuff. We were actually selling those little stand-up scooters with the little gas-powered motors on them. I don't know if you guys remember those.
Oh, right.
But we were selling some of that stuff and selling it online and selling on eBay. And so we were able to sell that stuff really, really fast.
Right.
And we did $800,000 our first year in business, and did 2.8 our second year.
Wow.
2.8 million in our second year. So, and it was because of that. I think what's interesting about funding, at least when it came to those private loans, was we sold a couple family members. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's the interest we'll provide you on these loans. We got them, and then results matter.
Right.
We started, getting some traction. We started selling a lot of products. We were making these private investors some money. That led to them, telling some other family members and friends. And before long, we had $500,000 invested into the company.
Did you have to give up any equity at all into the company?
We didn't, but we
Straight
did.
interest rate.
It was all loans, but it was high.
Right.
I'm talking high. I'm talking 20%. It was high.
Wow.
But
Sign me up.
but it was what we needed, and it worked.
Right,
So-
certainly, yeah. I would definitely mentor and caution
Yeah,
against
me
credit
too.
cards and high interest rates, but sometimes you have to do. I mean, did you have a business plan? Honestly.
No, I didn't. And the reason I hesitated was because our business plan was spreadsheets, right? We did a good job of sitting down and looking at how much the rent was going to be, how much the utilities were going to be. I mean, we weren't stupid about it, right? We figured out what the runway was going to be, right?
Right.
And that was our business plan.
Gotcha.
So we knew the numbers, but it wasn't very much people invested into the company because of us.
Sure.
I never handed anybody any piece of paper. I physically talked to them, and I get very animated. When I start talking about business, I get very animated and start throwing my hands around,
Right.
and that helped.
Yeah.
I remember I had a customer one time walking into the business, and I was just like, hey, how's it going? How can I help you? And he was coming in looking for a little dirt bike for his son.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, come on in. Showed him. We have these little mini 125cc dirt bikes. Showed him around the showroom, and the guy was like, oh my gosh, you own this? This is crazy. Congratulations, good for you. And I ended up showing him, giving him a tour of the place, and just spent the entire day with this guy. And then at the end of the day, I sent him an email, and I just said, hey Roger, I just want to say it was so nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in today. It was a lot of fun talking to you. If you ever need anything, let me know. P.S. As a startup, we're always looking for people who are interested in making a smart investment. So if you know anybody who would like to invest into my company, please pass along my information. And he said, I'd like to invest in your company. And the next day, he sent me a check for $45,000.
Wow.
This is a customer.
Right.
So the money's out there.
Sure.
You just have to look for those opportunities. And of course, I think when I start talking about my business, especially in that form, or when I'm there giving a tour, my passion just radiates from me, and I think people can see that.
That's the reason you're drinking out of the black jug, because we put some commerce in there for you. Keep them locked down a little bit. I'm just drinking water.
Me too.
So tell me a little bit about the on ice, right? I'm just kidding. Tell us a little bit about the, as we kind of wrap things up before we go into questions.
Sure.
Tell me about the golf cart business. What has evolved there?
So it's brand new. We have our first 4 golf carts, and the reason I really wanted to try to find a product that would offset the seasonality of the scooter world. So we're extremely seasonal, and to put this in perspective, this month we might sell 30 units. In August we'll sell 300. So that cash flow roller coaster that we're on is intense, especially when you have 24 team members. So golf carts, I felt like were a great one. It was something that we could easily add to our license. Right now we have, flooring through Wells Fargo for our inventory, so it fit on that, and we could just add it to that credit line.
Explain what flooring is.
Okay, so when you have a dealership, and it took us a while to get to this point. It wasn't something that we always had, but distributors will actually put the inventory on your floor for a specific amount of time. Well, they'll put it on your floor, and the bank, which is Wells Fargo, will actually, they give you a credit line for that inventory. But the credit line, the inventory is the collateral for the inventory line. Now, if you are really good, or if the distributors are really awesome, sometimes they'll give you that inventory for a period of time with no interest. So we might get the inventory for 3 months, no interest. So we'll actually get the scooters, put on our floor, we'll have 3 months to sell them before we incur any interest. And that's awesome when it works out.
Right.
Otherwise, we either have to pay the unit off after 3 months or pay the interest on the unit. But it's nice because we've been able to save our business cash for payroll, operating expenses, and not on inventory. So that's been a huge deal.
That's awesome. So let's open it up, see if we can probably open some questions from the group here, or any of them that are getting sent in via email or otherwise. Does anybody have anything? Don't be shy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question. If you could go back to the point where you're sitting waiting for the bus to come and say, hey, I think I have a better way. What did you think you could do at that point that nobody else was doing? Do you think that you could sell scooters cheaper than anybody else? Because there probably were other ones here. Do you think you could supply more of them? You could convince more UF students to buy them? Where did you think that you were going to be able to start a business and make an impact that nobody else was doing at that time? You know what I'm asking? Yeah.
It's a great question.
So there was another scooter dealership at the time. We weren't the first to market necessarily, but I did see that as an opportunity, and I didn't. And definitely price was one of those factors, because I couldn't afford a scooter when I was in college. There wasn't a lot around. So like I said, there was only like maybe one other dealership at that time. But we definitely went after price. I think that's kind of reflected in our name, New Scooters for Less. And over time, that people have asked, like, would you have changed the name of the company? Like, do you think that's a good idea? And I still say no. It's like we're not in business to provide the cheapest scooter. We're in business to provide the best value at that price. So I don't know, like, if that answers the question or not. But
So let's talk about, let me ask this one real quick, because this really is kind of tails on that. So we talk a lot about companies are kind of split into 2 parts, truthfully. There's a product side, which they're trying to put into the marketplace, right? So yours happens to be scooters, but it could be a myriad of different technologies. It could be software, hardware, biotech, or it could be automobiles or scooters. The other side is company culture, which is the people, which really is the company. Product's one thing. That's kind of what I think you were driving at. It's easy for a person, we could all sit here and kind of model our own scooter company, right? And then we would have core values around that, like, wow, I know a niche that I could beat you at your game, right? And so, you know, and you know, I could come up with 1,000 little dumb ideas, throw them against the wall, if something sticks, I have a scooter company. But how do you balance out that product side with the company culture side? You know, what becomes more valuable to you, your employees or the customer satisfaction?
I mean, I think employees are always more important. The customer satisfaction is ultimately going to come from the employees. I think what we did well in our values was, you know, our number one core value is to create and recreate the UCE. And we say that stands for the ultimate customer experience.
Right.
The people who know us know that we built our business around customer service. You know, and I think that's extremely important. Customer service, I feel, is just something that's just non-existent anymore. You know, and a good example was, in fact, we were filming our vlog a couple weeks ago. Like, we had a customer who sent out a very negative tweet about our business. You know, and it had not whatever he was upset about was never brought to a manager's attention. You know, but that's just the world that we've created. And I say we, like business world as a collective.
Right.
Is that customer service is just non-existent anymore. You know, we as patrons into businesses just expect customer service to be core. It's just the way it is. So, you know, of course, luckily for me, when I got that tweet, right, like, because I'm so active on social media, I saw it immediately. I go and I start researching, trying to find out what's going on.
Right.
And pull the service writer, pull the manager, get the information, and we call the customer and we say, hey, like, we saw this, like, what's going on? We were never in the know. And he was blown away that we contacted him so fast. He's like, oh my gosh, I was totally not expecting to get a phone call.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And we were able to take care of it, and he removed the tweet, and we were able to provide a great customer experience. But it just doesn't happen anymore. And so that foundation for us around customer service has really, it's been a big differentiator between us and competition, and we hope that will bleed into the values of other businesses, that people will, you know, follow our example.
Right.
And help us bring customer service back to business.
Yeah. Awesome. Good question. What else out there?
Yes, sir.
I've always been fascinated. A lot of like influencers talk about how Snapchat's playing like a huge role in customer service and bringing that back. So, and I've always like questioned, how do you use Snapchat as a business to reach out? And you gave an example, but if you could give other examples of how interactions that you've had with customers, specifically on Snapchat, to help your business.
I think with any social media, it's about the engagement, right? So if somebody comments on one of our videos, I respond. If somebody asks me a question on Snapchat, I respond. If it's an Instagram direct messenger, you know, I respond. And that's how you really start to build those relationships. For example, on Snapchat, one of the things that I do is every time I sell a scooter, we literally go through a check sheet with the customer, right? So we're teaching them everything about their scooter, what they need to know. I walk up to the customer and I said, hey, I'm the founder of the company. This is my organization. This is my personal Snapchat code. It has all my social media contact information on the back. But if you ever need anything, hold on to this, scan it, and you can reach out to me directly. All right, this is coming from the person who founded the company. All right, like, I'm not too big for anybody. Like, I will help any customer who reaches out to me. And I've had people, you know, pull this out and contact me at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, you know, broken down on their scooter at 10 o'clock at night. Like, that's a situation that's not fun to be in as a customer or as a business owner, right? But what's different, and where we provide the UCE, that ultimate customer experience, is I respond. And I helped that young lady get her scooter started 10 o'clock at night, and she got home safely. And that was the only thing that was important in that moment, right? But Like, is there any? I don't know if there's any short-term value in that besides the fact that she got home safely. You know, like I'm not trying to monetize that, but I can guarantee you that she shares that experience with somebody. That somebody, you know, when she shares that experience, maybe, just maybe, that'll come back around in future business. But it's been a great customer service tool, and that's how I've been able to use it. And Twitter's done the same thing, you know, just like with that guy, for instance. People direct messaging via Twitter, being able to answer their questions. And sometimes it's just like, hey, Collin, I can't remember when my next oil change is. Could you tell me? And I say, yeah, like you're due for service at 1,200 miles. I say, great, thank you. But, you know, it eliminates a phone call. You know, our team is busy.
See, I would have said, you're due right now, and you better get in here.
You know?
No, that's awesome. That's
I mean,
really, really
and
cool.
it's definitely helps, but that's very much a long-term play, right? Like I don't expect that to bring money right now.
Yep.
Yes, my question is more general, like how did you do your marketing? Like you said, Snapchat, Twitter, these are of course word of mouth are great methods nowadays. So how did you do your marketing back then in 2004, and how are you doing it now?
It's a good question. So things were very heavy print, like you know, we used to do, and we still do like alligator classifieds, but you do alligator advertisements. You know, there was a magazine called Insight Magazine, which was just a publication that you'd be able to pick up at the bus stops. A lot of print, a lot of radio. You know, we used to do advertising on all the radio stations. More your traditional,
Right.
what we would refer today as traditional media. We do very little of that today.
Right.
And I'm very, very heavy on social media in terms of targeted ads, remarketing. Are you familiar with that? So somebody goes to our website and they are surfing for a scooter, they're looking at scooters, and then they go back to Facebook. They're gonna see a new Scooters for Less ad. It's gonna pop up. And so a lot of remarketing, whether it's that or with you know, Google, you know, remarketing, that kind of thing. So very strategic, very targeted. For example, right now with golf carts, like if you're above 50 years old and live in Hale Plantation or Town of Tioga, you're definitely seeing a golf cart ad. Right? Those are the newest golf cart communities here in Gainesville, and we're targeting those specific zip codes. So yeah, but
How much of the revenue do you think comes from the online ads versus ones who listen from their friends or something in Gainesville or see some print media?
no matter how great our targeted marketing is via social media, our 3 top revenue or marketing, you know, avenues are the decal on the side of the scooters. Like you see NS4L on the side of so many scooters. And when you're a freshman and you arrive to UF and you're like, I want a scooter. You go to a pot of scooters and you see NS4L on everything. And that really helps drive new business. SEO on, you know, a lot of people just go to Google still. Like go to Google, Gainesville scooters, right at the top of the list. That's important. That's still one of the top, but word of mouth, you can't ever beat word of mouth. Friend referrals have always been the top. So, yes.
What advice would you give to young Collin 13 years ago sitting at the bus stop, and would you listen?
Sitting at the bus stop?
Yeah, like having your idea, what advice would you give to him?
Learn to tie a tie.
Good question. I would tell him, 1, you're doing the right thing by starting a scooter dealership. I'm proud of you. Good job, Collin. But you need to study up on leadership. And I think when I look back, obviously I think we all evolve. When you're in this position, you're going to evolve as a leader. You're going to learn, and you're going to get better. I mean, we're all human. One of my biggest weaknesses, I would say, over the last 13 years has been that I react to a lot of situations versus responding. And what I mean by that is like one of our core values is to stay calm and scoot on. Right? Like, don't freak out. It's gonna be okay. Take a deep breath, analyze the situation, and soak it all in and make a very executive decision. You know, make a clear decision. I used to just, you know, flip. Like I'd just be like, it was just very reaction. You know, I would just react to the situations that occurred around me. So that's the one thing I would definitely tell myself. And a lot of times when we look at those great things, like at the end of the day, most of the situations that I've gone through that have been really, really bad, or I thought they were really bad, in the grand scheme of things, they're this big, right? Like there's people all around us that are dying from cancer, and you know, we have family members that are sick, or you know, there's people that just have way bigger problems than we do in business. And so I just use that to check myself now. Like my problems at the end of the day, no matter how bad I think they are, they're really this big.
Going back to customer experience, I come from a background of extensive customer experience. Why do you think there has been a fall off from like executives at bigger organizations and not focusing on keeping their customers happy?
That's a great question. And I don't know.
Do you think it's social media? Do you think it's online? No, seriously. And, you know, because it used to be so much face-to-face, right? And now you can do so many things via not having that customer contact. And so I wonder if there's a desensitization. We've talked about, you know, look, we can't kid ourselves. We were all in here earlier. We were all faced like this. You know, we said, hey, go talk to anybody and everybody, which some did, but we're still catching up on things and communicating with friends. And so I don't say it flippantly. I say it kind of sincerely. It's one of the best questions, because look, I own hotels, okay? That's customer service like 24/7. There's never a downtime, never, right? So you have to take that so incredibly serious. And it also has a social component too, right? Because you're online and so forth. So you have all these different elements between, you know, TripAdvisor and Yelp, and you know, they can come at you in many ways. And so I wonder if, you know, and so part of the question I guess would be, is it social media that is desensitizing companies, not people, but companies, from going that different doorway into the customer service experience?
I think it can be, for sure. I mean, especially, like you said, we act different when we're face to face.
Right.
Have you ever, like, I've had people send me like very aggressive emails, or like, you know, chewing me out via email, and then I'll just pick up the phone and call them, and then all of a sudden they're the politest person ever. You know, has that happened to anybody else? Like, I mean, that happens. So I think that might have a lot to do with it. The other thing, I think a lot of it is just because there's too many businesses that are focused on money, right? Like when we look at, I mean, let's look at the airlines, for example, right? The latest United situation. I mean, we could all agree that that's not the way you remove a customer from an airplane. And, you know, it's just that's what happens when we become more focused on money and the short-term dollars. And I think that's when we start talking about public companies, you know, the CEOs in place are trying to maximize that shareholder dollar, right? As opposed to really looking at the long-term benefits. And I don't necessarily know if that's their fault. You know, they're put in that situation. They're put in the place where they gotta like maximize the short-term dollars. If these CEOs stepped in place and were like, you know what, like I'm looking 20 years from now, not 3 years from now, I'm looking 20 years from now, what's gonna be the best move for this company? If we made more decisions based on the 20-year plan than the 2-year plan, we'd be in a much better spot, without a doubt.
But don't you think that if instead of taking that airline situation, we'll say your scooter company doesn't step up its game, doesn't it create an opportunity for another scooter company?
Absolutely.
So wouldn't it create another opportunity for another airline?
Which I think it has,
Yeah.
right?
listen, so we were talking about my age a little bit earlier, right? When I was a kid, Sears was going to basically put every company out of business, right? Because they had a jewelry store in there, they had children's clothing, they had bicycles, they even sold insurance, and on and on and on. Remember that, right? So, listen, they sent everybody a catalog with everything in it, so you didn't have to go to all these little mom and pops. I'm just telling you the facts. And so, fast forward, 3 decades, and look at Sears today compared to places like Target, Walmart, Costco, and so forth. They created a window there because they really started focusing on other elements that made them targets for other companies to come in and take that market share. And so the airline has exposed itself to a better way of doing things, right? I think ultimately in 12 months from now, we're going to see policies in place that will change airline travel, quite honestly, and it takes that really hard hit moment to really jolt the system to say, look, you have to do better. But I mean, just like your company, it keeps you on your toes when you get that tweet, and you have to solve that problem for sure. So we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah, you've been so patient too. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah.
So, Collin, so this is in regard to employees, right? So how do you handle situations with employees that don't buy into your vision? Basically, how do you fire somebody without getting a backlash? You know what I mean?
We just have to communicate. Communication is key. So you need to sit down, like if it's me, like I'm gonna sit down with them and I'm going to try to find out why they haven't bought in. I think what's interesting in that moment, you're gonna find out a lot of the times it's you. Like it's something that I'm not doing well enough, right? Like maybe I'm not communicating to them, maybe I'm not giving them the feedback that they need, maybe they're not getting the constant communication from me or whatever it is, but like I'm just gonna talk to that person and really find out. And then I mean, as an employer, I'm gonna lay out my expectations of them, right? So I'm gonna say, these are your roles and responsibilities under this position within my organization, and these are your KPIs. Like these are your key performance indicators. Like this is how I'm measuring your performance. And if you're not living up to these expectations, then we're gonna need to sit down and talk. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'll fire the person either. It just means I might find a position for them that's better suited for them. But the way you really get buy-in is by earning the trust of your team. They need to know that they're safe, that they're not worried about that they're not worried about their job. Am I gonna lose my job? Like they're gonna feel safe. And they want to know that they can grow within your organization, right? They want to know that there's opportunity there. Like we get buy-in from part-time college students, right? Like the way I do that is by saying, like, you're not just fixing scooters. I understand that you're only here for 2 years for your part of your college career, but you're literally helping us make Gainesville the scooter capital of the world, right? The way I get buy-in from employees, like, here's a great example from a technician. I had a technician who was assembling a scooter. I walked by him in the warehouse, he's assembling a scooter, and I said, hey Anthony, I was like, I'm putting somebody's baby girl on that scooter. Doesn't that give his job a lot more purpose? Right, like he's not just assembling a scooter. You assemble a scooter at somebody else's dealership. When you come to New Scooters for Less, you ensure the safety of somebody's daughter, somebody's son. And I said that knowing that he had 4 girls at home, right? But he has completely bought into what we're doing.
Thank you.
That's an awesome answer. We're going to close things up. I will say I had a great mentor. I worked for the New York Times Company for about 8 years, and I had a mentor. His name was John Fitzwater. And he had this great saying about firing people. He said, if you hire right, you'll never have to fire. So the lesson learned there is when you are out creating a company, when you do that interview process, it's really critical that you do communicate on the front end those expectations. Because the right person for the right job is a perfect fit every time. You'll never have to have that issue arise ever. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today.
Thanks for having me,
This
guys.
has been awesome. Let's give Collin a big round. We look forward to having you back next month as well. And be sure to tell all your friends to come out and join us. It's been a great experience with all the folks who are coming here. Gainesville has one of the most wonderful startup environments to be able to take your ideas to market, and we're trying to expose that really organic, great, and awesome launch into this community to try to keep our great talent that's here and grow upon that so that we grow our own within. I think that's really, really critical for Gainesville to kind of be itself. And so, again, want to thank everybody for coming out. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.